Very shortly. So we're going to have Peter Allen come up and do a land acknowledgement.
Good evening. I'm formally acknowledging the traditional as having contributed to the process of walking hand in hand as the Indigenous did in time immemorial. We are grateful for the fortune of lived and work experience alongside our Indigenous brothers and sisters on their ancestral territories. We are grateful for the knowledge keepers, the elders, and the trail makers' footprints that continue to lead us to our home destinations that we may live in harmony. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Gilles Allard, and I'm the president of the Historical Society, Central Alberta. It is my pleasure to introduce a speaker whose life has been the tapestry of Alberta's natural and cultural heritage. Rodney J. Fenton is a storyteller, educator, and community builder. His journey began in Badlands of Drumheller and has spanned oil fields, museums, and classrooms across central Alberta. From his early days delivering newspapers and exploring Dinosaur Valley, to his decades of leadership with Red Deer River Naturalists and the Red Deer Museum, Rodney has championed experiential learning and community partnerships. He's a charter member of Central Alberta Historical Society, a former director with the Historical Society of Alberta, and a passionate advocate for involving youth in history, not just telling them about it. And I've included my children too when I first come out in the early 90s, so I truly treasure his contribution, and we're still here today mobilizing children. So please join me in welcoming a man who believes history is best lived not lecturer, Rodney J. Benton.
Okay. Thanks, Jill. Sorry about lecturing. Thank you all for being here. It's been a privilege to share stories from places and people who've shaped my journey, whether in the museum hallway, school fairs, or a snooker table in Drumheller. I've learned that history isn't just found in books. It's found in community, in curiosity, and in the questions we ask together. If there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this. Never underestimate the brilliance of young minds or the power of a good story. When we invite people, especially kids, into the process of discovery, we don't just preserve history, we ignite it. Thank you again, and may your stories continue to inspire. Whoops. Just get back to the slide here that was supposed to start it all. Oh, the tech. Anyways, we'll just get this slide bumped ahead. So let's see here. There we go. Before starting, I want to thank the Red Deer archivists, Jill, Lindsay, Brianne, and Jamie. If you know what you're after, they'll scan it and send it to you. Also, Judy Carlton, who could not be here tonight. And the heart and soul of Central Alberta and the music scene, Carl Scarrett. Thanks for lining this up. And David Dinan used to be with Shaw, and he's now of HSS Sound, and he's the best in the West. He just solves problems, you know, as they came up. So thanks to all those people. David's in the sound truck, so you won't see him for a while. Good evening. To salvage my sanity, or remnants of my sanity, I had to make this into two presentations. I consider it three parts: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic eras of this, the oldest natural history society in Alberta, that precursed the province by 7 years. Established as the Northwest Entomological Society in 1898, followed by the Territorial Natural History Society in 1902, then the Alberta Natural History Society in 1906, and to avoid confusion with the newly formed Federation of Alberta Naturalists in 1971, the name was changed to the Red Deer River Naturalists in 1976. The Paleolithic has all been written. Ted Mears, Michael Daw, Tina Crossfield, Dr. Robert Lampart, and most recently, and so importantly, Judy Carlton of the Black Falls and Area Historical Society and Archives. Judy nurtured a relationship with the Gregson family where Arthur Douglas' son, John, or Jack, lived in Kamloops. She collected the mother lode of materials, and what I'm talking about first, it can be found on the Black Falls and Area Historical Society's website. However, Ted Mears' book, 1977 book, The Homesteads That Nurtured a City, 1880 to 1905, is critical. Specifically, pages 205 and 206. Ted combed through the Calgary Herald for every mention of Red Deer, and he would record that. The Red Deer correspondent was Robert McClellan, something only Michael Daw could answer. And the second last question I asked him. The list of those who joined the Northwest Entomological Society is impressive, and Ted goes into detail. Dr. Fletcher, the government entomologist in Ottawa. Anglican Bishop Pinkham of Calgary and Saskatchewan. And Frank Oliver, MP, Sir Wilfrid Laurier's Settle the West man. And then at the first annual general meeting, November 7th, 1899, Reverend Joshua Hinchcliffe joined. He was an architect and he oversaw the construction of St. Luke's Church as well. Mrs., this always drives me nuts, Mrs. Dr. Barbara George was also signed up. Not Dr. Henry at that meeting. Now, Ted Mears and Michael Daw did not have the records Judy Carlton had and the Black Falls and Area Historical Society collected. Judy has correspondence regarding the Northwest Entomological Society, working on goals and objectives during the winter of 1899. Okay. I see this, you see that. What's going on with this thing? Oh, there's probably 3 ways we can change slides, I guess. Of course there is. This is a slide of Arthur Standing and Percy Gregson. Arthur arrived in Waghorn, Black Falls today, in 1890 from England, followed by his brother Percy, a solicitor, in 1891. Arthur was told he needed to leave England or die prematurely from his tuberculosis diagnosis due to the horrific air. His 10 years as an investment banker was likely when he met Nathaniel Charles Rothschild, who was an amateur entomologist and expert on fleas. This connection would be very important to supplementing their income. They homesteaded just above the flats. Goodness. Oh, goodness, goodness, goodness. There. I'm not a doctor, very poor on the spatial. They settled just above the Black Falls Flats, which was their pasture, which was probably good. This is a slide of Arthur. If something's not up there that I talk about, please let me know. Is Arthur up there in his horse? Arthur on his horse. Arthur raised pine martens, mink, and foxes, and became a proficient hunter and trapper. In addition to the furs he trapped, he put a white sheet over top of the animals to make the fleas visible, to capture them. He would then send them to Nathaniel Rothschild in England, who paid the Gregsons for them. Oops. This is Arthur's award-winning catch. This is an example of Arthur's catch. Like many settlers, you had to hunt, trap, and make a living to eat. The fleas were a bonus. This is a sample of the letterhead from July 17th, 1899. Percy was the first president of the Northwest Entomological Society, and Arthur served as secretary, treasurer, and librarian. Meetings were held in Percy's cabin, he called the curator. This is a July 17th, 1899 letter to Nathaniel Charles Rothschild from Percy, asking if he would pay for certain species. In this 1904 letter from Arthur to Nathaniel, he thanks him for the 10L. What is that, you financial people? So lira, for the nitra, swallowtail butterfly, and for the containers to ship fleas. Yeah, that's the 1904 letter, sorry, and this is a slide from the Calgary Herald. These are clippings of the Northwest Entomological Society offering 2 prizes to students for the best collection of insects and plants, including prizes offered by Professor Fletcher, the national botanist. On the right here, is over there? Okay, sorry. Is that it? Okay. On the right is from the Calgary Herald, is a documentation of the March 10th, 1899 meeting of the Northwest Entomological Society. And then the book, Volume 5. After Nathaniel died in 1923, Miriam Rothschilds took up the flea collecting and many other scientific pursuits. The Rothschild flea collection includes 260,000 in the British Museum. Judy Carleton and the Black Falls Historical Society, of course, had to have a copy. This is volume 5 of the 6 volumes. Now, I would encourage anyone to Google Miriam Rothschild. What a fascinating life. For example, she was involved with Alan Turing in the Enigma project that cracked the Nazi code. Percy Gregson's house, this is his house on Broadway Avenue after he moved into Black Falls. He was instrumental in founding the town. The house is still there, but it's been eclipsed by new buildings and houses. Percy returned to England in 1907. He donated the collection to the provincial government for whenever they built a museum. It was prominently displayed in the Mackay Avenue School and then the Alberta Legislature. What am I seeing? What are you seeing? Okay, so we got to get past that house. There we go. There's a click will do it. I see the next slide. You're seeing this one. This is a slide of Arthur Douglas Gregson with his 2 nieces. And they were overwintering out in the Yaha Tinda, and they were trapped all winter into the spring by a really horrendous winter. And there's stories written about that. Now, just to give you an example, the fleas. So his nieces, over that winter, captured enough fleas to buy 2 saddles when they got back. Now, Arthur moved to warmer climates between Comox and Courtenay in 1923. He opened another personal museum and continued raising mink. Their son, John Douglas, Jack Gregson, was a federal entomologist in Kamloops and an international expert on ticks. Is that the mural? This is a slide from the new Iron Ridge Secondary Campus. Judy Carleton and the Black Falls and Area Society raised $50,000 the Red Deer River Naturalists threw in 2,000 for this stunning 95-foot, 25-meter long mural depicting the Black Falls area pre-1900, featuring the Gregsons, who founded the Northwest Entomological Society, Black Falls, the Métis people who they worked with along the Buffalo Trail, and some Alberta history. The artists were Brian MacArthur and Don Deterando, and Don Saunders Dahl. Judy Carlton has QR codes that take you to the stories. Step in, sign the book, and take a look at this mural in the foyer. Whoops. Percy Gregson was re-elected president every year, and at what the Calgary Herald cites as the 5th annual meeting, Percy moved, seconded by A.G. Willie Dodd, that the Northwest Entomological Society cease to exist and be transformed into the Territorial Natural History Society. Percy continued to serve as president until Dr. George took over in early 1905. Elsie Castles was a very important early naturalist. Ernestine, or Tina Crossfield, writes a 1997 master's thesis about her titled A Natural Adaptation, Elsie McAllister Castles, Immigrant and Naturalist on the Albertan Prairie, 1889 to 1938. This is online through Concordia University. This is a picture of St. Luke's Choir, and Elsie is the second person in the middle on the right side. And yeah. This is an important master's thesis because, first of all, Carrie Wood was alive, Harold Daw was alive, and they knew Elsie Castles. Also, not to mention, sadly, Michael Daw. The thesis is based entirely on correspondence from her friends, as Elsie died first in 1938, and William, a remittance man, burned all her meticulous records and correspondence. Elsie had perfect pitch and identified birds by their sounds, an early Merlin app, not by killing them. William and Elsie moved brick by Piper brick from their second homestead attempt to a new home in Red Deer they called Robinwold in 1902. That one. The Piper bricks had been stuccoed over by the time David Moore and Yvette Rideau lived in it in the Waskasoo neighborhood. The house faced diagonally southeast on the lot and maximized sunlight. This is before Dave and Yvette moved to their home in Benalto, a perfect setting for two artists. That house has been long replaced by a big one. Dave and Yvette could tell you a really spooky story about that house and one of their experiences. After moving to Red Deer in 1902, Elsie became an active member of the Territorial Natural History Society. Elsie, Charles H. Snell, Hannah Pamley worked with John Jose Gates to have the Gates Lake Sanctuary designated a federal migratory bird sanctuary, which it was in 2024. This one we need to go out here. Now, the Castles, they built what they called, there was a wooded area on North Sylvan Lake. Couldn't find that today. So they had 33 acres of wooded area on the north end of Sylvan Lake they called the Ark, where they would stay in the summer, where Birchcliff is today. Dr. William Rowan, a zoology professor from U of A, and a grandfather to Carl Stretton. I'll just kind of point this one out here. Here's Dr. Rowan, Elsie, a friend, probably Mrs. Rowan, and that would be William in the background at their cabin. He was a musician too, Carl, among many other things. What he specialized in, though, was he was the international founder of photobiology on how light triggers birds to migrate. He is a University of Alberta legend. I think he would hang crows from the high-level bridge, and he'd mark them and test them, and then people would collect wherever they ended up. Quite a guy. Hope you've seen that one already. This one. This is a beautiful mural of Elsie Castles created by Tyler Lemmermeyer in the alley out the back door and just to the west of City Roast Coffee. It has a large QR code so that when you stand back and take a photo, it takes you to her story. As vice president of the Alberta Natural History Society, Elsie was the first female on an executive of any natural history society in Canada, perhaps in North America. This is a picture of Frank Farley with his nephew Farley Mowat at Hudson's Bay in 1931. Farley Mowat was named after his uncle. When Frank Farley arrived in Alberta in 1892, he talks about riding from Innisfail to Delburn and not seeing a person. Of course, one major reason for that would be after being decimated by smallpox in the 70s, many starving, and being confined to reserves, there would be very few Indigenous people around. Frank Farley was a member of the Alberta Natural History Society, likely the two predecessor organizations while living in Red Deer. He moved to Camrose in 1907 and remained an Alberta Natural History Society member and a lifelong friend and correspondent with Elsie Castles. He founded a Camrose and District Historical Society and wrote a book on the birds of the Battle River. Did I mention that William destroyed all Elsie's records? Okay. So the whole thesis is based on people that corresponded with Elsie. Dr. Henry George. Dr. Henry George had a museum in Innisfail, established a branch of the Territorial Natural History Society in 1904, and established the first branch of the Alberta Natural History Society in 1906 in Innisfail. Shortly thereafter, he moved to Red Deer. Other branches soon started in Red Deer, Medicine Hat, and Erskine. Dr. George wrote 3 scientific papers between 1899 and 1994. The Pocket Gopher, 1899, for the Canadian Entomological Society. I thought this would have been interesting to reference when all the Clearview people were suffering the nightmare of pocket gophers in their yards up there next to Missioner Center. And also the annual report, Birds of Prey in Alberta, 1903, and the rodents of Alberta in the Canadian Department of Agriculture's annual reports, 1903, 1904. That's his museum. It was right across the street from where Gates United is today on the west side. And here's the contents. Dr. Robert Lampart has lists in great detail the contents of this museum, as does Cheryl Croucher, background on the contents of Dr. George's museum on heritage trails. Dr. George offered his museum to the city of Red Deer when he was leaving to retire in 1923. The city turned him down. The collection ended up in various places. This is Kerry Wood. I mean, it was hard making a living, and one of the things he did was make bows. And he sold bows all over North America. And he writes about in one of his books, I think The Sanctuary, that when he was close up to a buck, he could not bring himself to shoot it. It would take a whole year of your meetings to talk about Kerry Wood. Come on, what's going on here? It's kind of working well. There we go. This is Marjorie Marshall Wood in her goal pads. Margie was a goalie for the Red Deer Amazons. She's right in the front. You can see her up there. But she missed the glory years when her family moved out of town, which were in the early 30s. Oops. Just further to that, I guess, on that point. In 1946, the province was planning to clear cut the Gates Lake Sanctuary. And Carrie Wood, at a December 11th meeting, AGM, rifled off letters to the city, the MLA, the Public Works, and the Minister of Education. And you know, when you think about it, it's not like today with computers. It was on Smith Coronas. In fact, Rondo told me that Carrie Wood burned through 23 Smith Coronas in his time. They tried to get him on a Selectric, but he didn't like it. But, you know, that's very important, or it wouldn't be there. Okay, we'll go back in case that was... I'm just not getting this. Crazy. Yeah, I mean, I've got this on there, maybe. Nothing happened, and then we lose it. It's like it's going backwards or something, I don't know. I'm not a techie. Okay. This is a photo of Ernest Robert Wells. Ernie Wells was a member of the Alberta Natural History Society and a reporter for the Red Deer Advocate. Back then, he wrote the articles, took the photos, developed the photos, did layout in the narrow hallway in the back of the building in the days of lead and chemicals. His daughter, Carol Turk, feels that's what killed him at the young age of 48. Ernie was the manager of the Red Deer Amazons and a very committed community volunteer. After he died suddenly in 1952, the Alberta Natural History Society dedicated an annual Ernie Wells Memorial Trophy. This is a slide of Helen Harris. Helen and Herb joined the Alberta Natural History Society in 1956. Helen and Herb lived on a farm around Pine Lake, and as anyone who was ever on an outing with Helen would attest, her knowledge of wildflowers was unbelievable. She could spot and identify them from 10 meters or 30 feet away. As president of the Alberta Natural History Society in 1970 and 1972, she hosted meetings with the newly formed Federation of Naturalists members at her Pine Lake farm. In the mid-1990s, she inspired Eileen Ford to start up a plant focus group to tap into Helen's knowledge. Eileen went on to be a wildflower and noxious weed expert herself, taking courses at Vermilion College and traveling all over the world, or all over with her flower focus groups. Helen was the first recipient of the Red Deer River Naturalist Owl Award in 1998. Maxine O'Riordan joined the Alberta Natural History Society in 1966. During this period, she, Helen Harris, an EM scholar, kept the Alberta Natural History Society going, studying entomology, botany, and ornithology. EM scholar wrote a history of the Alberta Natural History Society. Maxine served as secretary from 1971 to 1981, and her and Carol Neufeld started a newsletter and organized outings in the early 70s. Maxine received an RDRN Owl Award in 2002. In 1972, Gary Fabris, a biology professor at Red Deer College, suggested to Alden Neufeld that with all the issues roiling, such as the Dixon Dam hearings, expansion of ski hills, eastern slopes issues, that the Alberta Natural History Society really needed to get more active. That's Alden with a little foreshadowing with Myrna Pearman. Getting ready for the North American Bluebird Conference. Alden was a math professor at Red Deer College, and he took over as president of the Alberta Natural History Society in 1972 and 73. One issue Alden wrote about was damage caused by all-terrain vehicles invented by Honda in 1969. But the raging issue was the Dixon Dam hearings. I don't have photos of Carol, who is also a math professor at Red Deer College and very active with the Alberta Natural History Society and then the Red Deer River Naturalists. Carol and Alden contributed back-to-back 5-year bird atlas inventories, 10 years all told, for the Federation of Alberta Naturalists in the Delburn area. Alden and Carol received a 2001 RDRN Owl Award. Don Wales. This is the most prescient decision for Red Deer because Gary Fabris hired Don Wales as a biology instructor at Red Deer College. For Red Deer, Alberta Beyond, Don made his first presentation to the Alberta Natural History Society in 1974. And as he says, you make a presentation and they sign you up. From the age of 12, Don wanted to be an entomologist. Later, he remembers one class at U of A with 6 students. Red Deer is so fortunate to have had his volunteer environmental and community service of Don Wales over 50 years now. Don Wales received the RDRN Owl Award in 2015. Messed up. Okay, Michael O'Brien. Michael O'Brien and Ken Larson met at the Dixon Dam hearings. There was plenty of propaganda to go through from the Department of the Environment. Michael made a video, damn it yes, damn it no. Not getting there, folks. There we go. Ken Larson. Ken Larson was losing the Red Deer River south-facing bank on of his farm and was moved north. He wrote about this in one of Peter Zosky's Morningside books. The article was about how this very special microclimate of the south-facing bank of the Red Deer River, where he and his brother played as kids and enjoyed as adults, and then how absolutely unimpressed he was with the final dam. The Red Deer River Naturalists opposed the dam that really wasn't necessary. The Joffre petrochemical plant uses and returns water, as do cities, the rooftop effect, use and return. Ken and Linda Larson were RDRN Owl recipients in 2019. One person as of late has wondered whether Red Deer could have flushed their toilets. Jeff Broadbent, and I have no pictures of them, took over from Alden as president in 74 and 75. And his partner, Dorothy Broadbent, was the president of the Federation of Alberta Naturalists. This really became confusing. Dorothy's unpublished papers are in the Red Deer archives. The Federation of Canadian Naturalists found them a little too controversial. It was Fred Schutz who came up with the name in 1976, the Red Deer River Naturalists. I'm not sure about you, but as someone who played, loved, lived, and worked along this incredible, richly diverse 728 kilometers of the most extraordinary geography on Earth, the name sang to me the first time I heard it. As moved by Alden, Neufeld, and seconded by Maxine O'Riordan, with a serious discussion about the history, the new name was adopted. Fred Schutz was a RDRN OWL recipient in 2000. No, there we go. Alden Neufeld designed the logo in 1976. Fred wrote a column called, Fred Schutz in Bluffton, a polymath really, was interested in absolutely everything. Fred wrote columns called West of the Blind Man for over 50 years in the Ponoka Herald, Rocky Mountaineer, Rimby Record, Eckville Examiner, and the Sylvan Lake News. Fred spearheaded the founding of the Rimby Museum in 1963 to save local history from American oilmen buying it all up at farm sales. Fred was the most influential mentor for a young Myrna Pearman. He inspired her love of the natural world and photography. Fred served as president in 1976 and 1977. Oh, I'm messed up, folks. We'll go back a page. Now, for the 10th anniversary of the Federation of Alberta Naturalists, in 1981, Dorothy Broadbent wrote a history of the Red Deer Naturalists, Red River Naturalists, the Alberta Natural History Society, the Territorial Natural History Society, and the Northwest Entomological Society. She cited 1898 as the founding of the Northwest Entomological Society. Dr. Timothy Meyer, an early president of the Federation of Alberta Naturalists, also wrote a history. He wrote a letter to Dorothy Dixon prior to the 1991 Federation of Canadian Naturalists Conference hosted in Red Deer by RDRN, reminding her that the 85th anniversary being celebrated was at least the 92nd, 93rd according to Broadbent, and hoping she would correct that at the conference. Nature Alberta, previously FAN, has all their issues digitized now, so you can go back and read Dorothy Broadbent's history. I'm going to belabor this point. What am I on Carrie Wood? I should be so. I'm going to belabor this point. Red Deer Public School Division, number 104, 1887. Westerner Exposition, 1891. Gates United Methodist Church, 1892. St. Luke's, 1893. Red Deer Board of Trade, 1894. By 1906, Leonard Gates had died in 1907. Especially in Red Deer, it was all over. Okay, I'm on. We got Fred, Carrie Wood. Did we have them? There we go. The 1980s were extremely busy and extremely fruitful for the RDRN. Simultaneous projects like a big explosive splat. Over many years, members of the Red Deer River Naturalists would visit Winnie and Charlie Alice, or Mr. Bluebird, as Carrie Wood referred to him, on a regular basis. In the 70s, the Alice Bird Farm had the highest density of mountain bluebirds in North America. English sparrows and starlings were trapped. Cowbirds, great horned owls, and merlins were not welcomed. Any predator of Charlie's beloved bluebirds. By 1981, Charlie looked after 284 bluebird boxes. He had no problem with coyotes. In 1979, Union Carbide was proposing an ethylene glycol plant and were offering to buy Alice the Ellis Farm, and other surrounding land. RDRN members Michael O'Brien, Ken Larson, Alden Neufeld, with pro bono help from another member, Robert Scammell, spent 16 months negotiating a deal with Union Carbide, the provincial government, and the Ellises to preserve Charlie and Winnie's lifetime of dedication. The 40-page agreement is in the archives, and it was signed on March 10th, 1982. Michael O'Brien asked Morris Llewellyn to chair the board. And although swamped at the Red Deer and District Museum, he agreed to do it. Now, I see, so here's left to right. There's Walter Lindley, Oris Litwin, Fred Schutz, and Morris Llewellyn. In the front, Michael O'Brien, Winnie Ellis, and Charlie Ellis. Fortunately, Myrna Pearman has written a detailed history of the Ellis Bird Farm in 2019. Now, in 1988 and 1989, this is Charlie with a swallow. In 1988 and 1989, over 2 fiscal years, the humble brother and sister kicked off the Red Deer and District Community Foundation with the donation of $1.6 million, $3.5 million today. The donation included designated funds of $55,000 within the foundation to the Red Deer River Naturalists, Kerrywood Nature Center, Friends of the Kerrywood Nature Center, Red Deer and District Museum Society, Medicine River Wildlife Rehabilitation Society, the Easter Seals Campaign for crippled children, and the Ellis Bird Farm. They also donated an additional $50,000 to each of these 6 organizations to use at their discretion. This was very important to RDRN, who were in tight fiscal times. Did I even have that up for you? No. The board, okay. These 2 things at once. Skip that. This is Alden Neufeld serving as an MC out at an Ellis Bird Farm event. From the negotiations committee in 1980 to his retirement in 2003, Alden was involved with the Ellis Bird Farm for 23 years after the RDRN board. He also served on the Gates Lake Sanctuary Committee for several years before he moved to the left coast. Alden designed and built the first Ellis Bird Farm Interpretive Center for $60,000. Alden created this bronze ghost sculpture for the Rotarians celebrating the 50th anniversary of the eradication of polio around the world. Being the dedicated educator he is, he had a video and a step-by-step examples of the complicated lost wax bronze process featured in the Red Deer Museum. Alden and Carol Neufeld were RDRN OWL recipients in 2001. Just before the Ellis Bird Farm was officially opened, the summer of 1981, the province of Alberta announced a $23 million gift from the Heritage Trust Fund for a riparian park in Red Deer, as they did in Lethbridge, Grand Prairie, Medicine Hat, the Inglewood Nature Center in Calgary, along with the Royal Tyrrell Museum downstream, Head Smashed In, and so on. Some vision. That $23 million for Waskesiu Park turned into $28 million when it opened because of the wicked interest rates of the early 80s. Michael O'Brien served as Red Deer River Naturalist president in 1981 and 82. Along with the Ellis Bird Farm Limited, he, Ken Larson, and other Red Deer River Naturalists members cranked it up in the fall of 1981 as planning began, and stuck with it until the official opening in 1986. Craig Curtis, the Regional Planning Commission's urban planner, assigned to Waskesiu Park, had sent out 50,000 questionnaires all over central Alberta, and with a 9% return rate. A nature center was supported by maybe 50% of the people that returned it. Public hearings were organized for October and November of 1981. At a November 5th public engagement session at the GH Daw, with 96 people in attendance, 28% were Red Deer River Naturalist members. Don Wales has an incredible archives and has the details of each presentation that fall. The other group that's out in force at each of the 6 sessions were the Red Deer Motorcycle Club, all-terrain vehicles, the snowmobiles, and the River Rats, recreational boaters. This is a slide of Carol Schmidt. Carol Schmidt, a Red Deer River Naturalist member who lived in the Pines, headed up a group called the No Motors Group. This was critical in the planning of Waskesiu Park to counter the lobby of the groups mentioned above. Outside the organization, there was very little support. There's lots of community opposition. Now, over 40 years later, it seems somewhat ironic. When you compare it with quiet e-bikes, e-boards, e-chairs, e-scooters, and the issues they present, specifically manners. After the hearings and the Red Deer and first RDRN submissions, following a December 7th, 1981 board meeting, the Red Deer River Naturalists sent in another 3,300-word document that went into detail about every node in the proposed park. Unlike many organizations, school boards for example, that submitted briefs in the fall of 1981, the Red Deer River Naturalists stayed deeply involved in planning. Ken Larson took over as president in 1983 and 1984, and he and Michael O'Brien walked with Craig Curtis and planners through the entire park at least 3 times. There was a legendary moment where Michael O'Brien and Craig Curtis saw a fox and her pups, something that had not been seen for a long time. RDRN took politicians, administrators, and the general public on outings throughout the proposed park. Ken Larson farms just west of Bonalto. He wasn't farming, he was volunteering. As Ken attests, the Recreation Director Don Moore, City Manager Michael Day, and Parks Manager Lloyd McMurdo were very good to work with and very supportive, with the exception of one moment. The Rec Department wanted to put a 9-hole golf course and parking lot at Heritage Ranch. Don Wales remembers going down and talking to the guy in the Caterpillar. I was told to be creative, he said. Now, Michael O'Brien summarizes this in his 1982 presidential report. After an unsuccessful skirmish with the Rec Department, followed by a successful Red Deer River Naturalists invasion of council chambers, the idea was defeated. Heritage Ranch had been donated by the Hoopers for $1 to the city. The golf course was moved to where it is today in a gravelly location with a buffer of trees along the Red Deer River, where it is today around Mackenzie Trails. Craig Curtis has told me how critical the Red Deer River Naturalists were to how Waskesiu Park turned out. The bike paths and shale walking trails were designed to meander around creeks and around trees rather than straight engineered paths. The shale paths serve as a psychological tool to keep people out of the wooded areas, to some degree. The Waskesiu Park Planning Committee reported to Red Deer County Councilor, City of Red Deer Administration, an MLA or their designate, and Waskesiu Park was a regional park until 1994. This is Eldon, Newfelt planting trees at the Ellis Bird Farm. However, Eldon also edited signage in Waskesiu Park. One idea RDRN was going to pounce on was having a nature center to serve as an educational sentinel and a protection for the Gates Lake Sanctuary. This is a slide of Linda Parrington. As Don Wells said, you make a presentation and the Red Deer River Naturalists sign you up. In 1980, Dr. Barry Parrington made a presentation to RDRN regarding their travels somewhere in the world. And he and his partner, Linda, joined the Red Deer River Naturalists as members. Linda took over as secretary as Maxine O'Riordan stepped back after 10 years. Linda served as board secretary for almost every year from 1981 to 1997, 16 years, apart from volunteer maternity leaves, until she returned to teaching in 1997. Linda was one of many RDRN Red Deer River Naturalist members who actively participated in Waskesiu Park hearings. In the early 90s, she hosted RDRN board meetings at her home in the Pines, while their younger kid, Kyle, and I missed the second persons, were at home with Barry going in and out. Some of these meetings would be from 7 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night. Michael O'Brien kept us busy with many urban issues, one being the location of the Sports Hall of Fame and its impact on the habitat of Richardson's ground squirrels and their predators. He thought the Sports Hall of Fame should have been downtown, where it would help a dying town center. Many Red Deer citizens signed a petition against the proposed location. I guess I know this is a little gross, but I guess the jocks won out. This is Dorothy Murray with their son Colin. Dorothy Murray served as RDRN newsletter editor from 1982 to 1989. And from the moment the Kerrywood Nature Center opened in 1986, has been at the front desk every Tuesday. And before that, she volunteered far more than that as chair of the Friends of the Kerrywood Nature Center, the Gift Shop Committee, and other ones. So every Tuesday she's there. This is Fraser Collin and Dorothy Murray. Before RDRN had an office in the Kerrywood Nature Center in the early odds, Dorothy would explain the difference between the Kerrywood Nature Center programs and the Red Deer River Naturalists. We are about fourth Thursday environmental speakers, regional educational outings, but could also raise hell with the city and other levels of government, although Dorothy would never use that word. Dorothy has an incredible RDRN archives and always passes on materials to the Red Deer archives, and there's some samples here in the table. For example, her husband's presentations, the opening of the Kerrywood Nature Center, his presentation about mosquito control and trying something different. The other thing she has is a 1991 Canadian Nature Federation pamphlet and what was offered. No one else seemed to have that. And it was probably the finest, in the history of that organization, with 325 in attendance, it was the finest in the Canadian Nature Federation's history. We're out of the lodge, you're so close to everything. She has that. Also, she has a sample up here. So in the 80s, from 1982 to 1988, in addition to monthly newsletters, the Red Deer River Naturalists put out a quarterly publication. She has the first one up here, pre-computer. I mean, what Dorothy has will be critical to what Dr. Sandy Murray, you know, it'll be critical in my ongoing presentation that'll be online. Because all of that, those will be supplements, so you can read what Sandy said, read what, you know, what they said instead of just talking about it. I just had to put this one in. This is from Dorothy. I could not help it. Thanks to Dorothy. This is Gail Morrisroe, Dorothy Murray, and me from our spousal support group at the 20th anniversary of the Lindsay Thurber Comprehensive High School's class of '69. Bob Mills was a very popular biology teacher for a few years in 1969. He remembers this class well. You could ask him about it. One year he was going to take his class, maybe not this class, to lay in front of the bulldozers just south of 32nd Street along Piper Creek. Since then, Norman Bauer has donated all the land from the south end of Rotary Park to 32nd Street to the city, protecting the beautiful meandering portion of what today is Waskesiu Park. Oh, I went backwards. Larry Late. Larry Late not only served as a treasurer, off and on for several years, but his skills from working at the Red Deer Advocate were very important when RDRN members were gathering for a work bee to lay out these newspapers. Back in the pre-computer, you know, day of shooting PMTs and scotch taping the edges. And some of these are 12 pages long, and Dorothy brought a copy. This is a slide of Brian Stackhouse. Brian Stackhouse was a RDC biology professor and coach of the cross-country running team, who used the Red Deer College Bower Woods for his classes with this ecological biodiverse area behind the college. Grasses, wildflowers, shrubs, deciduous trees, and climax spruce along the meandering Waskesiu Creek. This is Don Wales. He coached the cross-country ski team at Red Deer College and used this area for loppets and for his biology students. Brian and Don worked together on these low-impact recreational activities. Don Wales and Brian Stackhouse submitted 2 briefs to have the RDC Bower Woods natural areas included in Waskesiu Park. Craig Curtis said, well, there was only so much money. This is Craig Curtis with the Waskesiu Park plans at Bower Ponds in 1985. One bombastic Red Deer Advocate story stated, they're going to pave the park. Paved trails have turned out to be one of the most popular aspects of Waskesiu Park. People worried about crime, and they still do. But as Ken Larson said, that's a social problem. Don Wales cleans up camps in Barrett Park and messes up bike jumps that eventually wash away in erosion. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but he does it anyways. Now, Peter Lougheed rode his bike from Heritage Ranch to Bower Ponds for the opening in 1985. I asked Michael Daw if he wore a helmet. He said no. This is Jim Robertson, who was hired at the new Kerrywood as the new Kerrywood Nature Center director in the fall of 1985 for the last phase of planning for the Kerrywood Nature Center and the Gates Lake Sanctuary. The Red Deer River Naturalists lobbied the city to expropriate the Glenmere Dairy Farm as a buffer zone in what they used to call the onion skin approach to environmental protection. Craig Curtis said that was critical. City Council voted 8-1 to expropriate the dairy farm. What was left in the dairy farm's wake is Sicer milk vetch, a noxious weed that cattle love and spread. They use goats to kind of mitigate it because they don't spread it in the sanctuary, but it's interesting, yeah. It's all over the place. It's incredible. This is Jim Robertson and Dr. Sandy Murray. He hands over the keys to the cupboard. Sandy had served as RDRN president in 1985 and 1986. This was such a great moment for the Red Deer River Naturalists, who had a permanent home for monthly presentations, and the Gates Lake Sanctuary was finally protected. No dogs, no bikes, no skateboards. Environmental education. Craig Curtis was not a big supporter of the latter, environmental education, and him and Jim Robertson were in kind of a public fight over that in the press. Now, although Fort Normandeau opened in 1986 officially, it was a mess that had to be totally redone. In his president's report of 1986, Sandy noted that RDRN had organized 39 outings and 40 outings the year before. And he finished with Tempus Fugit, time flies. And Sandy, in his speech, without going into total detail, just talked about the vision of, J.J. Gates and Kerry Wood and the Alberta Natural History Society, and some of the stupidity, like the clear cutting, the 1952 fire that the city, that's in Kerry Wood's book. They wouldn't fight it. Wasn't on their territory. And, Kerry Wood and his friends made the day possible. This is a slide of Myrna Pearman at the Kerrywood Nature Center front desk, likely talking to a teacher and writing ecological educational programs for schools. Myrna worked at Kerrywood for 6 months and received a National Teachers Award for her environmental educates she created before she even started at the Ellisburg farm. The Kerrywood Nature Center and Waskesiu Park received several awards, including the Canadian Urban Municipalities Environmental Award, 3 awards for the Kerrywood Nature Center and Gates Lake Sanctuary from Alberta Recreation and Parks, and the Canadian Parks Award. This clipping refers to a presentation that Bob McGee made to Ted Mears for Red Deer History. There's a book here if you'd like to look at that. Craig Curtis as a city planner, and Ken Larson on behalf of the Red Deer River Naturalists. It's a heritage certificate from the National Park Centennial Committee for Red Deer's preservation of natural heritage. This is Dr. Sandy Murray with his Emerald Award in 2020. Dr. Sandy was very busy immediately after the Waskesiu Park opened. Michael O'Brien had heard about a new approach to mosquito control that the World Health Organization was experimenting with in 1983. He took a course at Vermilion College, invited someone down to demonstrate the use of, you have to say this all together, like 5 times quick. Thuringiensis, Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. BTI is a little easier to say. Don Wales tells me it was out at the wetland by the landfill that they did the test. In the fall of 1986, the city was discussing the annual mosquito control program, and Tony Conley decided he'd make it an issue. This is Dorothy Murray with her 2020 Emerald Award. She's been so critical to my research over the years. When it comes to spending money, the new experimental selective approach to mosquito control program, council was split 4-4, with Councillor Gail Sircan being absent. Michael O'Brien, and I've got a copy of that, quickly rifled off a letter to Miss Sircan about the interesting meeting she had missed. At the next council meeting, Miss Sircan swung the vote 5-4, and the city hired Grant Moyer's company for that next spring. This is Grant Moore's. He won't let me use any pictures. You know, it's impossible to get a picture from him. This is the spring of 1987. It was a dry, big El Nino spring, which is a great way to start the selective biological mosquito control program. In this interview with the Red Deer Advocate, Grant explains, well, chemicals will control everything when you come down to it, but that's the problem. They will kill everything. BTI ruptures the stomachs of mosquitoes and black fly larvae, but is harmless to other mosquito predators like dragonflies, for example. The selective treatments are GSI'd and mapped every year for results, and the program gathers massive amounts of data and research. When it started, the treatment program went right from Balmoral to Poplar Ridge. It no longer does. The biological mosquito control program garnered attention across Canada. When Grant showed me this place in Grant Moyer's office and garage, when Grant showed me this place back in 1995, I was gobsmacked, and I wondered how the computers could even handle the data. The detailed GIS research from this mosquito control program, renamed now I think the nuisance program, collected the data down to the microscopic that then led to the ecospaces evaluation process. The city of Red Deer received an Emerald Award for that in 1998. When people complain about the mosquitoes in Red Deer, just go downstream and compare. There's always Deepwoods off, of course. Today, the city has a 241-page integrated pest management manual to guide citizens in the most environmentally effective ways to treat pests. Park staff tell me that Grant has taken most of the photographs. I believe this office and garage should be designated a Red Deer Heritage Site. Michael O'Brien received an individual Emerald Award in 1994, mostly for his work on the Alice Bird Farm, but he contributed much more to environmental education, ecological protection, from the time the O'Brien family moved to Red Deer in 1969. He worked for Access before it was terminated in 1987 by Don Getty's government. The Alice Bird Farm received an Emerald Award in 1996. In 1994, Red Deer River Naturalists presented Michael a Lifetime Achievement Award. This Gary Ross painting included a mosquito, a Richardson's ground squirrel, and the fox and her pups. Jennifer O'Brien says the only thing missing is a tree snag. Cutting them down just drove Michael to distraction, cutting tree snags. We lost Michael far too young, on June 12, 1997, at 63 years old. In conclusion, the Red Deer River Naturalists and their predecessors have had a profound, positive ecological effect on Red Deer, Central Alberta, this province, Canada, and North America. As you will learn in the next presentation, Tuesday, October 28th, the Red Deer River Naturalists, the Astonishing Volunteer Contributions, Part 2. We defend ecological protection and support environmental education for the next generations. We understand that once our environmental jewel, Waskesiu Park, or other natural areas are compromised, they are lost forever. I am dedicating this presentation in memory of Michael O'Brien, who is a very important mentor to me, to Fred Schutz and the carloads of Rimby residents who would carpool down for our fourth Thursday general meetings, to my longtime friend Michael Daw, who I can't believe is gone, and all the visionary Ardearn walking spirits who have left the Great Mother a better place for having walked upon it. Thanks. Does that show up, that slide? The video? Does it show up? Oh, I've got to press the play button, maybe. Hey, is that it? Oh, technology. There it is. That's the Dragonflies in Heritage Square one August morning. Yeah, how would they, what is it, 56 kilometers in 6 directions? I think they've cut one open with like over 200 mosquitoes in them. So that program leaves it alone. Well, I apologize for the technical difficulties there. So I don't know if you have any questions or. I think I'm supposed to, closing remarks, I guess, to be delivered by Rodney. Thank you all for being here today. It's been a privilege to share stories from the places and people who shaped my journey, whether in a museum hallway, a school fair, or a snooker table in Drumheller. I've learned that history isn't just found in books, it's found in community, in curiosity, and the questions we ask together. If there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this: never underestimate the brilliance of young minds or the power of a good story. When we invite people, especially kids, into the process of discovery, we don't just preserve history, we ignite it. Thank you. So there's a few documents up here if you want to, if you have any questions. Bibliographies, notes. This is Ted Mears' book from 1977. That's a very important one that Myrna wrote, the detailed history of the Ellis Bird Farm. Here's some documents. Dr. Timothy Meyer's letter to Dorothy. You know, that's such a mean thing because Dorothy's the most amazing person all over the planet, really, you know. So, that was the finest conference they'd ever had. What's this? Oh, yes, announcements, yeah. Okay, here's some memberships. Something else. What else would I like to announce? Oh, tomorrow's meeting. Who is our speaker, Rick? The fourth Thursday.
Jessica Hayes speaking about ground squirrels.
Ground squirrels. Wow. That was my favorite one ever by, who was it from the University of Lethbridge? Right, Gail Mitchell. I'll never forget that. Is it? Yeah. Yeah, that's, them and pocket gophers are pretty interesting. Yeah. Okay, you're welcome, yeah. Technology, damn it.